Good afternoon. My name's Tim Markle. I'm director of the Southern Regional Center for Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs. This is Conversations Aren't Showing Up for Kids. This is what has turned into a weekly time to spend talking about issues and concerns for parents. We try to have a nice casual type informal space to talk about these things, but we know that there are a lot of barriers to living the life that we want to live that are out there when we are parents, especially with children with special health care needs. I do want to remind everybody that I am not a doctor or a lawyer, and so I'm not offering any medical or legal advice during this. We are just a bunch of people talking and having a conversation. And I am so excited today to have this conversation. We're going to welcome Val Madsen, and Val is the Training and Development Specialist for Respite Care Association of Wisconsin. I don't know if you call it RCAW, but I really like saying RCAW, but I really doubt that you do that professionally. So RCAW or Respite Care Wisconsin. Respite, Val, well, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to join you this week.
Well, and we know that respite is that we have a group of families that don't know what respite is and could really use it. We have a group of families who know what respite is, could desperately use it, but can't find it. We have a group of families who know what respite is, they can find it, but they have struggles paying for it. We know that there are families who know what respite is, they know how to get it, and they know how to pay for it. And so we have parents that are all across the spectrum of services when it comes to respite care. And so I know it gets confusing sometimes. And so one of the great things I think there is Respite Care Association of Wisconsin, because you guys are all about respite care. Would you like to start off? I know I set off a series of questions, but I'm going to first start off with, could you just explain briefly who Respite Care Association Wisconsin is, and maybe just a brief sentence about what's this respite care that we're talking about?
Yeah, so RCAW is a statewide organization that provides services and supports for both caregivers and respite providers. So we're unique in the way that we don't hire any providers ourselves. So we don't employ respite providers, but we want to give information to people. So we want to give information to the caregivers so that they're able to find, train, and retain, which we'll talk about a little bit more today, but also training and information to the respite providers, because there's not a lot of information out there for people who want to be respite providers, and we want to give that to them as well. So we have quite a few different options or opportunities for families and providers to have resources around the subject of respite. The other thing
Val,
that's unique
I just want to say, I love the fact that you're one of the organizations that is out there that is looking at both sides. So often we come across with, we're all about this, but we can't have respite without respite providers. And we don't want just anybody. Our families want quality, trained, trusted respite providers. So you're like, okay, how can we make sure that these providers are quality, trained, and trusted? So I love the fact that you're looking at both sides.
Yeah, well, and that's something that was realized many, many years ago is there's not a lot of regulation around respite. Even though it's one of the most needed services in Wisconsin, there's not much that says this is how to train someone or these are the qualifications someone needs. And we want to up that quality. Let's give providers the information so that they can provide quality care, but then they also stay in the field. Because if you don't have information, you aren't going to stick around. The other thing that's really unique about RCAW is all of our programs are free. We don't charge a fee for anything. We want to give information. We want everyone to have access to the high quality information we have. So it really is, let's share our information. We try to create partnerships with different organizations so that we can offer their options or opportunities in their organizations. And again, we just want to get high quality respite for the state of Wisconsin.
So as we talked about, one of those areas that people sometimes struggle in is knowing they need respite, being able to connect with respite, but not being able to pay for it. So does RCAW offer any sort of grants to help out on the financial end?
We do. Yeah, we have a couple different grant options. One is called our Caregiver Respite Grant. And so we will actually give funds for caregivers to pay for respite. And what's unique about our program is even if you receive funding from another source, maybe CLTS, but you've used up all your funds, or you have a worker in mind that CLTS doesn't allow you to hire, a family member or someone that doesn't meet their qualifications, we'll still help you fund that. So what's really cool is we have a lot of flexibility within our grant program. So families are able to request every 90 days, every 90 days, so quarterly, up to 5 days of respite. And that could be 20 hours a day, or it could be an overnight trip, so 5 days straight. Maybe it's 3 hours a day for 5 different days. However you use that, and you get to choose the amount you're going to pay your provider. So we don't have regulations on that. You can use whoever you want. They don't have to be on our searchable registry, and they don't have to have a set rate. It's completely flexible. We want you to find the care that you need and pay because different families have different amounts of care and different levels of care. So we don't want to regulate that either.
So let me make sure that I get this right. So let's say I have a child with special healthcare needs, because I have a child with special healthcare needs. And let's say that there was a need, that I just really needed a night off with my spouse or somewhere. And I have a brother who is, he gets along really well with my kiddo. I could pay him as a respite care provider there because I trust him. He knows his medical needs. He knows my son's physical needs. And I can work with you guys to get that a number of times a year. Is that, am I understanding that it's that straightforward?
Yeah, it is. Yep. And we just ask that you've tried other resources. But yeah, if he isn't able to be paid for through another waiver fund, or if you don't qualify or you've run out of funds, yes, it's that simple. We want it to be that easy. We want to give respite opportunities to caregivers because it's so needed.
Well, and not everybody has, this fantastic brother like I do. And so then they're at a point where they're just like, okay, I now need this break. I need this respite. But I want somebody who's quality, who understands a little bit about it. So what do you guys offer in the way of trainings?
Yeah, so we have a program called the Respite Care Certification Program, or RCCP, and it is a series of 10 courses that are online that people can take. So even if your brother, so you have this brother, he could take that as well if he just wanted information. And I would say probably about 25% of the people that do take the RCCP are family members that want to learn more to help out their family, which is really interesting that they have that we have that draw. So that's just kind of a unique draw to the RCCP program. But with the RCCP, it's 10 courses you take at your own speed, and it is based towards respite providers. So there's basic, what is respite, and kind of talks about the different funding sources. It talks about disability basics. So while we don't go into specific disability information, because I could talk to you all day about autism and not tell you about this specific person. It really talks about person-centered care. So let me give you some information on how to approach your appropriate questions, but then talk to the caregivers, talk to the participant themselves, create that relationship so that you have that person-centered care. We have a medication management because respite providers are able to give medications, or there might be emergency medications. So just having some information behind that. We do have an abuse and neglect section, professional ethics and conduct, adapting activities. So it goes into different adaptations, challenging behaviors, just kind of a lot of different information so that providers have information. This is something we worked with DHS on. So it does meet the requirements for CLTS waiver providers. So if you do have CLTS waiver funds and you are employing them directly, or well, not directly, but through your county waiver agency, they can take this training and meet all the requirements to be a respite provider through CLTS. So we've made sure that we had that partnership as well. But again, it's a free program that anyone has access to.
That is so fantastic. So even if, I am, very family centered and I just, or my kid is so complex that I have a very limited number of people that I want to trust with them, they can go through this program, become certified or whatever, to then I can use my children's long-term support funding to pay for respite services through them.
Correct. Yeah.
That is really cool. Or, I can contact a respite agency who already knows the children's long-term support waiver requirements. So all their people, if I work through an agency that provides respite, they should already know the requirements. So I can trust that this person is trained and is going to be able to be reimbursed by the children's long-term support waiver funds.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of people do use agencies. I know in some of the larger communities, those agencies often have wait lists. So some families do have to find them individually. Or also in some communities, there's just not providers. Once you get to the rural areas, there's just not providers out there. So it's figuring and talking to those people, like who is in your area that could be a good fit.
So let's talk a little bit about finding those respite workers. So larger cities, you could, like you said, there's some agencies. You have a registry, which we'll talk about in a little while. But like you said, in a lot of the rural places, there's no one going to drive, an hour to provide respite care. So who am I looking for to help me?
Yeah, so it's really, and it's challenging. It's challenging everywhere. But think about the people that you interact with day to day. Is there maybe aides or assistants in the school? Look at maybe the high school students that help out in the classrooms. They typically can't be paid through waiver funds, but they could be paid through our grant program as a possibility. And so really looking at those interactions that you have. Is there someone that's really good at the gas station or that interacts really, just think about your community, the library, think about those interactions that you have naturally, maybe your faith-based center, wherever you might go. Think of those natural connections and figure out what works. One thing that I did for one family I was working with is we kind of talked about, okay, what works for you? And this parent has twin daughters with autism and single parent and kind of both in completely different directions. And she ended up asking her friend, who also has children, normal functioning children of their own, that they would hang out together, but to help with respite. And so she's being paid as a respite provider, which was a natural support anyways, but then that way the mom, they can go out and do things in the community without the mom having to worry about the kids running in different directions, because her friend, who's a respite provider, is able to do that, or able to support and come along.
And respite doesn't have to be an overnight. It doesn't have to be hours. It can be just like a half hour at a time. Just when you need to get things done. Because I know there are some families that their kids' needs are such that they can't even shower if they're alone with their kid. And so that need is out there. And so to find that person, and you're right, is when we have our children out in public, we could see who is interacting with them well, who's shying away, who we wouldn't trust with a 10-foot pole with our children, is we can pick up on these people. And so having our eyes open, thinking, could this possibly be someone who could just every month just give me a little bit of a break?
Yeah. And also being open to kind of those non-traditional people you would think of. What I mean by that is some of my best staff that I've had in previous positions might have dyed hair or have a little bit different personality because they're open to differences.
Yes.
And it's just a really great experience to have those different viewpoints, but they're open. They're open to learn more, which is, so just having that flexibility. Thinking about students, I had a lot of parents that really struggled. Oh, I don't want to use a student. My child uses a G-tube or has seizures, and it makes me nervous to use, an OT or PT student. But they're the ones that have the energy and they're willing to learn and they want to learn.
They want to learn.
They want to learn.
Mhm.
And, you know, as long as you have open communication and they feel comfortable calling you if they have a question, that's okay. You know, and it might be those first couple weeks where they do call you more with questions and you don't have to hurry home. Just thank you for calling me. I appreciate that. Let me answer your question quick and then, you know, we'll get back. You know, so not running home and like taking over, but just being available and portraying that you're available.
Yeah. So considering those college students, community colleges, the tech colleges are places
and the
where
job
there are
boards.
these, the job boards where there's people where this is their passion.
Mhm.
And they don't need a full-time job because they're going to school full-time, but this is something that they could and would be willing to do. That's a great idea.
Yeah, the college job boards, you can get some really good connections, and some of those people might be willing to drive because they want the experience as well. So even if you're in a rural area, you know, I live in a rural area. I drive 25 minutes to a grocery store and 45 minutes to the nearest like Walmart, actual store. And that's just how, you know, so for me, it's not unnormal for me to drive a distance. And that's just how kind of the rural communities are. So really working on finding those connections and knowing that people might be willing to drive.
So do you have any, and I can research this a little more, but we do have a question. Where do you find college job boards?
Oftentimes, if you go right to the colleges in your area, so UW-Madison, they have a job board. You can sign up to post positions right there. Typically, it will say, you know, on-campus position or off-campus position. Typically, they don't charge money, especially the smaller like community college boards. You're able to just fill out an online form, but it's going to the individual colleges and figuring out what system they have.
Okay. Yep. Right. Because I doubt many have just a physical board anymore.
Right. Yeah.
But you have to find and this is where it's different for each college, is which division, which unit is in charge of that. And there's no consistency about units and who's in charge across colleges across the state.
Right.
But you can always start with the Disability Resource Center. Most colleges have a Disability Resource Center, and you can explain what you're doing, and they should be able to, once you find someone with that insider knowledge. So the most important thing I think is to find some contact at that higher education who has that insider knowledge about how that college works, how that university works. And that inside point of contact may be the Disability Resource Center.
Yeah. And you can also go on because typically colleges will have like faculty, prospective students, current students. If you go into students and look at would need a job or, you know, and look where you're searching for a job, typically at the bottom it says, oh, do you want to post a job? Click here. So it's if you go in kind of on the back end or the reverse way, so you're pretending you're looking for a job, but then it typically will take you to a link to post a job.
Well, I am very fortunate that I haven't had to look for a job for a decade or so. And so this whole virtual world of locating jobs is a new sort of world. So that's
it really is. Yeah. And so many places are going to online virtual and not even taking paper applications, or they don't want you to come in to drop things off, you know, or text this number and you get an interview. You know, you don't have to do anything anymore. But yeah, it's just very interesting.
I used to have to dress up for all of my interviews.
Right.
Now it's just like, you know, top. That's what I need. You know, I could be in my shorts or my sweats.
Right. We also at RCAW have a resource, our registry, our respite registry. So anyone who completes our RCCP, the Respite Care Certificate Program, is eligible to list themselves on our registry. So then caregivers can come to our website and search for free people in their county. So you just enter in the search criteria, children, adults, elderly, and then what county, and it will pop out the list of people that have been trained that listed themselves on the registry. Again, RCAW doesn't employ any of these people. It's just, we're saying that they took our training. We still encourage you to do all of your due diligence. And so we actually have a training, how to hire, train, and retain workers, so that you can go through, this is how to do an interview process. This is how you train them. This is,
Wow.
yeah.
So
So we
they
really
don't
want to
have to
give you
keep,
information.
yeah, they don't have to keep rewatching this,
No,
what we're
no,
doing today. There's
no.
more.
There
There is
is more.
so much more of
Yes.
being able to figure out how to find, train, and retain respite care. You have a training for that.
We do. And we have online training. It's pretty user friendly, but it goes through kind of all of the steps, gives you some tips and tricks. It talks about interview questions, so you can actually download a worksheet so that you can print off, and it has interview questions. And it also talks about you stepping back and thinking about your child and what things do you need to remember to tell them. Oftentimes relationships between caregivers and providers don't work because not all the information was given to the provider and the provider didn't know. But that's not necessarily the caregiver's fault. They just didn't think about it that way. You take care of your child all the time. So you don't think about, oh, after a feeding, my child tends to throw up, and because that's something that happens all the time for me, I don't think about it. But if you don't tell that to the provider ahead of time, you start losing that trust and that relationship that you have with that provider, and you're not going to keep them. So the training really kind of talks you through thinking about ways that you care for your child and then how to convey that to the provider.
That is so important because you're absolutely right. As parents, we just incorporate all these little things into our day that other people would sit there and go, what the heck was that? And we're just like, oh, that was lunch. No big deal.
Right.
Whatever. This is how we roll. This is how my family rolls. So that I think is really important. Back to the registry just for a minute. How do you make sure that, because kids have different needs, is there a way in the registry to look for people that are more comfortable with feeding tubes, with adult diaper, with older children diaper changes or something? Is there, because there's a whole spectrum of people out there.
There is. At this point in time, our search functions are just, age group and county, but the providers have options to list whatever information they want. We also do, as part of that respite care certificate program, we do talk about ways to put information into your profile to hopefully give lots of information so you're not calling people that is not a good fit. But we are working on developing, and we're hoping a couple months from now, where caregivers will be able to post, hey, I need a provider. This is the information about my child. So that respite providers could search for a job, basically. It's really making a job post.
That connection.
Right.
Making that connection.
Yes. And that's what we want. We want to connect people in whatever way. So we're working on the technology and the, writing the search functions. But yeah, it's something that we are working on, and hopefully this summer, I'm crossing my fingers, because we're also making our grants applications online. So that's our big project right now. So you don't have to fill out the paper application. We're hoping in the next month or so, it will be online. So then after that, we'll do the caregiver job posting opportunities. So we're really excited to make things easier for caregivers so that you're not filling out more paperwork, because that's what you do all the time.
True. Okay, so I have now figured out that I would really love to have a few hours a month of respite. I've looked at the awesome directory, and there's no one in my area. And so I've looked around and I've identified, maybe a student or a therapist student, or, sometimes our therapists have assistants that are not fully trained therapists, but they really enjoy working with kiddos. So I have them. How do I then connect them to the training?
Yeah, so they can just go right on our website. And again, everything's free. So they go under our training section, click on the Respite Care Certificate Training Program, and they complete it. Again, at whatever speed they need to do it at. And then they have the option to be listed on the registry or not. And I would say probably half the people don't, because they're either taking it for their county waiver agency or a county, or their job uses our training as a starting point for training, which is
Mhm.
fantastic. Or I want to take care of my family member, so I don't want to be listed. I just want more information. But yeah, so then once they have that, you can ask for the certificate. Again, we're not endorsing anyone.
Right.
We're just providing the information. So then it would be back on you as a caregiver to make sure that they completed it. Decide if you want to run a background check or not. Obviously, if you go through an agency, that's something that the agency would do. But Wisconsin's an open record state, so you can, go to the Department of Justice website and run, it's called CCAP, and run a background check on a provider if you interviewed them and you got to that point that you want them in your house or you're considering it.
And you have instructions on how to do that on the
We do
website?
talk about that in the online how to hire, train,
to
and
hire?
retain. Yep.
Awesome.
Yes.
Wow, you guys really have tried to think of everything with that.
We do. We want to give kind of make it easy for you. That's really our goal.
So let's talk a little bit about retaining. Are there any main things besides I really love that point of don't assume, that you understand everything, but that doesn't mean somebody coming in cold is going to understand everything. So I really like that, think through the details of who your child is and what the unique strengths and challenges of that child are. Do you have any other tips for helping to retain respite workers?
Yeah, so it starts with the training, and making sure that you are, and we provide a handout of make sure you cover this, but it could be something as simple as your rules around the house. Again, not something you necessarily think of, but are you hoping the providers are going to wash the dishes they use before they leave? Otherwise you're going to start, again, these little conflicts that is hard to approach after the fact. But if we can figure these things out ahead of time, then you have that open communication. And really, that's the biggest thing. If you have open communication with your provider, so you set the expectations up front and you have that communication. So if something does happen, you can bring it up and address it right away, knowing that, yes, they might be in your home, so they almost become like a family member, but making sure that you understand there is a difference as well. You are still their employer. You still need to make sure that you're communicating appropriately with the person. But then other things is not overusing them or not either canceling last minute or calling last minute. So I know things happen and sometimes you have that, but not making that a consistent thing. I have had some providers leave where they like the child, but the parents calling me like, hey, can you come over tomorrow? Or, oh, we're canceled this afternoon. Or they show up 2 hours late, or, and that's on the caregiver side, not on the provider side. So doing those things, if it's once in a while, things happen. Everyone understands that, but communicating that, like, hey, I'm running late, stuck in traffic, whatever it might be, letting the provider know that you're going to be a little late coming back. And having that communication is really important, but you won't keep a provider. There's so many other options that they aren't going to stick around if they don't feel like they're a valued member of that care team.
Yeah, that basic respect is that, yes, they love your child. Yes, they probably really enjoy what they're doing and they find it meaningful, but they also see it as a job, and to respect that, and they'll respect it as well that way.
Yeah.
Which is great. So we've covered some of the basics of how to find the training on your website, and I'll get all these links up posted with the video, and a little bit about retaining. Now, I also know earlier you mentioned that, in some of the larger cities, there are respite care organizations. And I'm thinking those are in the large cities, that even some of our medium size or especially our small cities, there isn't a respite care organization, but yet there are a number of families that could utilize a respite care organization. So do you guys have any help if there's this group of families sitting there going, we all need respite? What if there was something in our town that could help us with that?
We do. We are actually just launching a program called Bringing Respite to Your Community. It's a 6-week virtual workshop that talks about having a respite program in your community, and whatever that looks like, whether it's an in-home respite program at a faith-based organization where they provide respite so their members can attend a service, if it's someone that's starting a respite center in their community. But we're working with these individuals that might want to start a respite program. And it's something that we've kind of naturally done for many years. I've gotten calls, like, hey, I want to start a program like this. Can you tell me how you started it? So really just trying to give information on how you can do that. And we're making it more formalized so that we'll have training 2 to 3 times a year. There is going to be some face-to-face virtual components of it so that we can build a community and a network within these people that want to start respite programs so they can support each other and maybe even partner up. Like this first round, I think I have 4 or 5 individuals from like the Milwaukee, Kenosha, Racine area. So maybe that's something they can partner up and develop even a larger program, or really make sure that they work together to get their businesses off the ground.
Well, and I also think of the fact that we are very, especially in some parts of our state, we're very diverse. Mm-hmm. And that there is something about having someone that I am comfortable with coming into my house to provide respite. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people who, look like me or have a similar culture to me just aren't available. Mm-hmm. And so then I'm looking at finding and retaining, but what if there was a group that got together and said, this is such a need that we are going to band together with our cultural community or our ethnic mm-hmm. community, and we're going to make this sure that this is available to our people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a really cool idea.
Yeah. So along with that, we are actually offering startup program grants for kind of these underserved populations, the rural area, Latino families, Hmong families, Native American tribes, kind of a whole range of different underserved populations throughout Wisconsin, to really help these either families or groups of people that want to start a program. So we want to offer some funds to help start these programs as well. So that's something new that we have just released. So we're excited about that as well.
That is fantastic, because that little bit of start, to get through that initial push before you can mm-hmm. get some sort of money flow coming in is mm-hmm. really important. Okay, I have monopolized your time for like half an hour. And so I want to make sure that the people that are on the call with us have an opportunity to either ask questions in the chat feature or they can unmute. I think we've covered the questions in the chat so far. We've worked them in. So folks, awesome folks that have joined us on the call. If you'd like to unmute and ask Val any questions or put it in the chat and I can ask it for you, feel free. I'm going to just shut up for a couple minutes here and we're going to stare at each other very awkwardly, because that's what we do when we're waiting for questions, because in this virtual world, nothing happens as you would think. Virtual, right? It's all electronic. You'd think it would happen quicker, but it doesn't. It's slower. Feel free to go ahead and ask a question or comment. Yeah.
With the caregivers call you for services on breast care, they have their I guess with the insurance company. Does Respite has anything to do with that?
So I heard insurance, but you're breaking up quite a bit. I think what you were asking is about kind of insurance coverage. Are you asking from like a caregiver perspective or a provider perspective?
So this morning I had a call. She wanted services for her, but she told me I had to apply through Iris. So that's what I was asking.
I heard Iris that time. Yeah, it's a really weird connection. I'm not sure. I don't know if you can maybe type something out in the chat.
Yeah, I was asking when the provider contact you to provide service, they say you have to have anything to do with that to speed the process.
Yeah, I am
Okay.
sorry, but like every other word is coming through. Is it, so we're like trying to piece together the conversation. So couple of things is, yes, I did hear insurance for a moment. And if there's, if you know of insurance coverage beyond children's long-term support. Also, I would be interested if you would share the county that you're in. I would also love to make sure you're connected to your regional center for children and youth with special health care needs. And feel free, I see you're going to try again. So let's give this another shot. Ask away.
Oh, no. This network is bad.
But we can hear you.
Yeah, this is going good. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was just asking because I had a lady contact me this morning and she's talking about for Iris insurance. So I care for her. It's like everybody froze.
Right. We did. We're trying to listen and piece together. So Val, I'll just take one quick shot. Okay, so I do not know exactly what Iris insurance might be. Now, there is a part of the adult long-term care system is you can choose an Iris program. I respect, I do something that starts with S, Iris, or a family care program. So the Iris program, you hire your own workers. So you would need to check with, the ADRC to find out who her coordinator is to see if respite is payable through her Iris funds.
And then typically the respite worker, the caregiver or the participant in this case, an Iris participant is the employer. And then the worker is paid through a fiscal agency, but that's all done through your Iris caseworker. So then that's something that you would work on. And typically there's a form it's called a participant hired worker. So there's a form for each of either the MCOs in family care or the different Iris consultant agencies to employ a participant hired worker. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it pretty much.
Yeah.
I emailed if I got email.
Perfect. Yeah. Definitely email us, and either Tim or I can follow up with you. Some other option or resources that we have at RCAW is on the provider side, and I don't know if this might be help in that direction as well. Is we have another training that talks about being an independent provider. So if someone doesn't want to work for an agency, they can learn about personal professional liability insurance for themselves, or information about the different funding sources. So if I want to be a CLTS provider, this is what I have to do. If I want to be paid for through Iris funds or family care funds, this is what I have to do. So again, trying to give as much information to the providers along with the caregivers is really important. Along with the caregiver training for how to hire, train, and retain, we also have a caregiver training that's called Respite 101, and it talks about the different respite funding sources. So if you have a child right now and you've been going through like the Children's Long-Term Support Waiver System, but you're getting close to that transition time, maybe you learn about family care, Iris, or some of the other funding sources that might be available. We also talk about our grants programs in there, but we just try to, again, give you as much information about the respite information, the funding sources, because it can be a confusing system because there are so many payment types, and where is that money coming from? And again, that's what we're here for. We want people to use respite. Wisconsin's very fortunate to have a lot of respite funding. there's just not, and that's a nationwide thing. There's not enough providers throughout the nation right now. And so really hoping to get people connected as much as possible.
So Val, I'm going to do the one thing that I should never do. That's I'm going to ask you a question that I haven't told you that I was going to ask beforehand.
Perfect.
It's a perfect way for interviews to go really badly. So when we talk respite, does it have to be provided within the person's house to count as respite?
It doesn't. So if anyone uses personal care funds, that typically has to be done in the house because it's around daily living skills. Respite is not. Respite can be done in the community. So maybe you do a community outing, you go to the park with the person. It can be done in a center. So some respite drop-off centers. I know Rock County years ago had a Saturday respite program, and they aren't up and running anymore, but it was just, you can drop off for a Saturday evening for a break. And that was a respite program. It could be a camp. So there's multiple different disability camps throughout Wisconsin. That is considered respite funds as well. So just a way for you to take a break, and it can be done it could be done in someone else's home. So some family or some providers do respite in their own home and have a child come in, and they could even be overnight respite in that way. So it's not even in your home or the child's home, it's in the provider's home. So there's lots of different ways respite can look.
Cool. Any other questions that are out there or in the chat box? Donnell did have to leave us here, and that's okay. So just wondering if there's any other questions that are out there. We can try to work our way through the tech issues, or you can put them into the chat box. Okay, so I did put in the links to find your regional center. I am at sorry, I should have put in my link too, but I'm at the Southern Regional Center. If you look for that, if you need to get a hold of me. Also, I will put in my email if you would like to follow up with any questions that you might have. But I also know Val has put her email address in there as well. And so you could also follow up with Val if it is a respite specific question. Trust me, Val knows much more about respite than I know about respite. I would like to thank you all for joining us. And Val, thank you so much for taking time to join us. Right now, I'm going to stop the recording, but you don't have to go anywhere. I'm just going to stop the recording. And then if we want, we can continue to have a conversation, maybe without the recording. Maybe the tech will work a little bit better. So just want to officially thank you. Really appreciate it today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.